Have you ever wondered what the largest map in video game history is? Maybe you thought of a few huge game maps already. The Switch Zeldas, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Red Dead Redemption 2. Maybe you even thought of Skyrim, because everyone thinks of Skyrim even though it's actually a pretty small map. Maybe you think you're sneaky, or that this is a trick question, that I'm trying to bamboozle you, and the answer is something asinine like Minecraft or No Man's Sky. But I'm not inclined to consider those games since they generate all their content on the fly. Well, I'm just going to spill the beans here because I'm an impatient little git. It's Daggerfall. Daggerfall has the largest map in video game history. The second Elder Scrolls game, released in 1996, case closed. But that's kind of boring, yeah? Especially, if you play the game. It's a very good game when you find the game to play. But it's mostly just nothing. In fact, indeed, they used procedural generation for most of the map, which I can't really blame them for. There is another game which is purportedly bigger than Daggerfall called Silk, but I played it, and it did not take me actual real hours to get from Ephesus to Chang'an. Well, it did, but that was basically the whole game. I don't know, felt kind of empty. Still fun as like a historical sim, though. But what if there was a game with a map huge enough to be roughly half the size of England? Meaning half of Daggerfall, but everything is handmade. Every piece of the map is intentional, and dotted with loads of places to explore, things to find, quests to pursue. Well, we have that. It's called Lord of the Rings Online. Lord of the Rings Online is an MMORPG that launched in 2007 and is still going to this day. When it launched, it only had the northern realms of Eregion playable up to level 50, but at the time of recording it has expanded to include pretty much every region from the books and The Hobbit up to level 140, with plans to expand into southern Gondor and Umbar in the near future. On the surface, the game could be accused of being a WoW clone, and that's almost certainly why it was first made, to challenge WoW. But it has long since developed its own identity thanks to its unique takes on class balance and singular trend towards PvE over PvP, leading to a bigger sense of community and focus on cooperation and exploration, rather than whatever they do in WoW. I don't know, I never played it. But enough about the pitch. The game map is huge. Absolutely bonkers in size. It's so big that every time it gets brought up, I frequently see people come along specifically to express doubts. The game can't be that big, they'd say. Something as the crow flies. Something horseback instead of running. I bet I could get to Rivendell from the Shire in, 10 minutes. These doubters never really played the game, at least not enough to know for sure, and definitely would never bother devoting the time and energy to actually measuring their counterclaims, because, as you might guess, they don't actually care. They just want the brief superiority of looking smart by being skeptical, because people think those two things are the same. We live in a society, but you know who would bother devoting the time and energy to actually measuring his claims? This guy. Lotro is my most played game on Steam, and it's not even close. This number here was 1,200 when I got my Steam Deck last Christmas, and it became 1,500 within 4 months. Hell, so I decided to record myself traveling from Micheldelving, here, to Minas Tirith, here, on the back of my trusty war steed, Nolwenn. She's a heavy one, so not the fastest, but also not the slowest mount in the game by a long shot. I could have begun in Thorin's Hall and extended the endgame to the Black Gate, but I decided to make this a semi-scenic route, displaying notable places from the books and films while trying to avoid areas not seen in either, meaning no arid Luin, and I actually hadn't yet cleared Ithilien when I did this, so yeah. The character I did this with was a level 109 captain. What this means, effectively, is no mobs anywhere would aggro me until I got to central Gondor, where I had to be more selective. The recommended level for East Gondor, where Minas Tirith is situated, is 105. In other words, if you are new to the game, do not try this at home. Beginning in the Shire was a mistake. Well, for me it was. Hobbits are my least played race. Nothing against them, I just haven't played them as much, so I'm not as intimate with the Shire as I am with other regions of Eregion. This means I immediately took a wrong turn down literally the first road I saw. Fantastic start. Fortunately, I realized something felt off, having trekked to and from Delving specifically, enough before to know what landmarks to expect. So I broke off from the road and began yeeting across fields and farmlands with zero regard for the integrity of anybody's crops. The next road I came across was the main artery connecting Delving and Bree, so I was in good hands from then on. I made a brief pit stop in Hobbiton to see Bag End for a minute before moving on. This is where Frodo's journey began. Luckily, I was able to stick to the roads because I wasn't being pursued by a cabal of ring wraiths, but that didn't stop me from getting turned around in Frogmorton and needing to check my map. The woodlands Frodo and gang would have trekked through are fully there to explore in the game. I just saw no need for the detour. After crossing the Brandywine River, I visit Brandy Hall and Crick Hollow, lag out something fierce, and run by Frodo's house before entering the Old Forest. Most players who go in here get lost immediately because it is designed to be a maze, but I keep coming back here for a smoke with old Tom Bombadil because his house is a beautiful respite from the horrific forest, and also has the best damn music in the entire game. Absolute banger. So I had no trouble rushing right through to him. His house is also immediately next to the Barrow Downs, which are downright unsettling. I took a small detour, costing about a minute and a half to see the Great Barrow, then doubled back, ready to head for the capital of Middle-earth. That's right, Gondor can go stuff it with its massive megacities. Bree-town is the real capital of the world. Within the game it acts as essentially the first central hub every character will eventually go through, no matter their starting area, and the resultant high player density has helped make it into a place most players will want to come back to, even at in-game levels. It isn't a terribly huge city, even within the game's own terms. It'll take approximately 2 minutes to run from one side to the other if you know where to go, but it is a very dense city. I didn't spend much time here, but I did stop and say hello to Mr. Butterbur the Prancing Pony. It's a shame there was not a band of players outside playing music at the time, but that is a fairly common sight. South of Bree, I ditched the road and charged directly northeast and then straight east so I would tackle the Midgewater Marshes and then the Weather Hills, where we will see our next book/movie landmark, Amon Sul, or Weathertop, where Frodo gets stabinated. This is the first zone we've been to so far where I think the scale of the game can really sink in for a doubter. Look one way, you can go there. Look another, you can go there. The Lonelands border a ton of other zones. Unfortunately, other than Weathertop, there's not much story relevance here. The Lonelands are mentioned by name in The Hobbit, but as far as I'm aware, you never hear about the Forsaken Inn, or Oscaruth, or Amon Ross, or Naroth, Harlug, Agamar, etc., in any of Tolkien's writings. Props to the devs for turning an otherwise barren zone, lore-wise, into something memorable for at least me, I suppose. The Trollshaws is in the running for my favorite region of the game, or at least Eriador, with only Evendim edging it out. And the Trollshaws don't seem to have much going on at first, especially if you arrive and traverse during the day. A player without a care can simply stick to the artery they've been following since Bree. It's still going, and it will guide them through the zone mostly safely. But at night the trolls come out and prowl the road. If you're on a purchased ride from a stable, you'll be fine, because you can't aggro enemies in this state. But otherwise, you can easily be taken by surprise. But one who sticks to the road misses the point. Look around you. This zone is gorgeous, and also more spacious than the mountains and hills would suggest. If you explore, you'll find caves with trolls, groves overgrown with swamp lurkers, and trolls, ruins, hosts of the restless dead, with trolls nearby. Even an elven alcove repurposed for a couple of Kargouls, who are way higher level than anything else, surrounded by trolls. Oh, to hell with it. There's only one reason that actually matters as to why the Trollshaws is probably my favorite region in the game. Hit it. Once I got across the Bree-land River, that's where Arwen in the movies, or Glorfindel in the books, called down a flood to sweep the Nazgul away. Into High Moor, I was supposed to turn right and cross a three-pronged valley full of giants and drakes and trolls, oh my, into Eregion. But come on, there's no way in hell I'm doing something like this and not visiting Rivendell. Rivendell is Rivendell. Always lovely, and the theme is stupid catchy. I pretty much just rode through to say I did it. I didn't stop anywhere. The city itself didn't add much total time to the trip, but the left turn in High Moor and run down and double back of a set of switchbacks added about 5 minutes. Anyway, onwards to Eregion. Eregion was added to the game alongside Moria and Lothlórien, the whole shebang being the first major expansion to the game. The area has a lot of lore significance, being where the rings that aren't the One Ring were forged, and the party spent a good amount of time here, trying to determine their best route forward. Unfortunately, in the game I think it really suffers from being the prologue to Moria area, and that's what people know it for. It has some nice ruins, at least. Fun fact, in the books, Aragorn first wanted to lead the Fellowship through the Red Horn Gate at Caradhras, but the blizzard happened and things fell apart, at which point Moria became the only sensible option. Interestingly enough, Gandalf suggested Moria from the start, whereas in the movie, for some reason Gandalf thinks trekking through Dunland and the Gap of Rohan is safer than Moria, despite having first-hand knowledge of Saruman's treachery. For those confused, Saruman's tower is right here, and Gandalf suggested they go literally here. It takes a flock of Crebain from Dunland to convince him to try the Red Horn Gate, which in the film snows in because of Saruman's interference. Then Gandalf regretfully agrees with much resignation that Moria is the only way. Moria really got shafted, pun absolutely intended, by the aims of this misbegotten exercise. I essentially beeline for the Chamber of the Crossroads, which I'm pretty sure is meant to be the room where the Fool of a Took scene happens in the book. Fun fact, you could jump down this well. It'll take you somewhere. It's an entire different part of the map. You'll be killed by falling down here, but when you revive, you'll be within the new zone. However, I didn't jump down during the ride, it's just a fun fact. I then yeeted straight for the 21st Hall, which had Mazarbul right next to it. That's the room where we find Balin's corpse, and Gimli cries out in dismay. The movie combines Mazarbul and the chamber. I then go back up through Durin's Way, through the Fanged Pit, to come out the upper end of Nud Melek, so I could get a nice side view of the bridge. You know the one. But with me being on the right side of it. But that also meant I was at the end of Moria. Shame, really. Moria is so iconic in the series, and here I was zooming through it. All told, Moria came to take me about 20 minutes. Don't be fooled, there's a lot here that I skipped over because I'm not here to dally. The devs really got to work fleshing Moria out. Also, if you're wondering why there are suddenly dwarves in Moria, the whole deal is after the Fellowship cleared out, word got out, and now a company of dwarves is leading an expedition to reclaim the mines. And when you come in, the expedition has been underway for at least a few weeks or so, even though you'll be there when they reopen the doors to Moria, but, After getting through the mines and leaving my goat behind, I go up to Mirrormere because it's night so you can see the stars. Lothlórien is an interesting zone in that there is no pressing danger. Well, the mean animals will warn you before they aggro, which isn't new to the area, but usually you will find at least one kind of animal, among others, that will attack you on sight. But not here. There are, of course, also no orcs, no nasty things, nothing like that. It's a nice epilogue to Moria, while also being a strange prologue to Mirkwood, which we will not be visiting on this trip. My captain rides right past Karas Galadhon because the elves don't know who the hell he is. See, I level skipped this character, so I never actually went through Lórien with him. But that means he cannot go inside the city. I don't have any standing with the elves. However, my hunter can, because his standing with the Galadhrim is more than sufficient. So here he is, riding around a bit. The next zone is rather odd to correlate with the story because the characters spend their entire time in that river there. Hence the name of the zone. That river there is the Anduin, not to be confused with the Barandwin, which we crossed back at the Shire. The Anduin is one of the most important rivers in Middle-earth. Unfortunately, the game doesn't have water combat, so we can't emulate what the characters were up to. They were watching Gollum try to hide on a floating log. The land is opened up for exploration, and the devs expanded on a good bit of bits, Namely, they made a ruined city out of Celebrant, which is a real area name mentioned in the books and used in the game here. The devs also put the northernmost settlement of Rohan in this zone, Stangard. It's not a terribly interesting settlement, as seen by how much I did not visit it at all in this run. But when I first discovered it, I thought it was the bee's knees, because Rohan is so frickin' cool. The Wold is where Rohan officially begins. Both the books and film pretty much just keep floating downriver and ignore this area, so I'll just describe it as I see it. It's pretty damn big. There are a load of settlements strewn about. Firstly, you'll find Langhold, which annoyingly does not have a stable, but you'll find out why if you do the quests. Then you'll find Harwick, which is where you'll get your first war steed if you don't use a level skip. Here you can even see the little track where you can run around and test things out. War steeds are trickier to control than travel steeds, which work like standard mounts, but war steeds have combat abilities, which only work in Rohan and beyond. And don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure they're also faster, but are also occasionally prone to rubber banding, though it's much better nowadays than it used to be. South of Harwick, I choke a little on direction because Rohan is so expansive, and just about any direction is valid, but I ultimately decided to go south, specifically so we could see the Argonath. Imagine traveling through Italy and never stopping at the Colosseum. Imagine traveling through Egypt and never stopping at the pyramids or the Sphinx. What are you even doing with your life? So here, I imagine it's the same. Why would you go to Rohan and never look at the Argonath? What are you doing? What are you even doing? Unfortunately, the East Wall is pretty straightforward, apart from the Argonath and its two other iconic landmarks. There is, of course, the Argonath. There's also the Dead Orc Glade, which is where Boromir gets oofed. I failed to run through it. And then there's Amon Hen, which to movie fans probably sounds like a metal band with a chicken, but to book fans, this one is huge. This is where the first book, or rather the second book if we're counting them as 6, ends. This chair here, Frodo tries to do something silly, and immediately almost gets the literal stink eye from Sauron for it, but hides behind the chair just in time, and the book ends. Very classic. After peacefully walking through this barricade because these orcs are pacifist hippies, I enter the Sutcrofts. Having seen the Argonath and Amon Hen, I decide the next thing to see is Eomer's Vengeance, which is a long way north. I could have instead crossed the bridge to Westemnet to book it for Edoras and shave off a lot of time, but I'm already committed to the scenic bit, damn it. I find Eowyrth, a town I remember distinctly for having a very annoying layout, and a few annoying quests attached to it. I'm glad I'm done with them. Near the scorched town of Thornhope, I find Eomer's Vengeance. This is where meat was back on the menu, boys! And Aragorn stubbed his toe for realsies by kicking a helmet. Just beyond lies Fangorn. Fangorn was a very strange trek. Where the old forest is a maze I cleared in, 2 minutes? Fangorn is fairly open, where you're far less likely to hit a wall, and yet I found myself checking my map near constantly. Definitely an area of the game I ought to explore more sometime. I didn't find any Ents, unfortunately, just a whole lot of horns. After emerging from the forest, I entered the Stone Deans, which led me to the burning fields of Martin, apparently a thriving settlement before Sauron had anything to say about it. Speaking of Sauron, I wonder how he's doing. The tower is a lot shorter than I remember it. Anyway, Helm's Deep! Helm yeah! There's the gate! Yeah! And the wall! Yeah! And the ramp where Legolas ran a horse through a bunch of armed orcs holding swords! Yeah! And there's the inside! Yeah! Frankly, I'm not sure how I got the game in a state where Orthanc is in ruins, but Helm's Deep is pristine, but I'll take it. Next up is a lot of riding. I take a wrong turn into a valley and then correct myself. Onwards to Edoras. The city is huge. I think it's at least as big as Bree, but more spread out. Love the horse fountain. Alright, time to check out Medusel. My captain was not allowed into Medusel. I assume because I level skipped him, which may have jumbled some quest flags or something. Luckily my hunter can get in. So here's him walking around in there. This is post-evacuation, so it's very empty. After departing, I go south. I pass through Underharrow, not to be confused with Dunharrow, which is upcoming, and immediately begin ascending the switchbacks. I love this early foreshadowing to the Druidine, although we won't be seeing them on this ride. Past Dunharrow is the Paths of the Dead. I'm not even considering it a separate part of the script because nothing happens in there. To get through it, you need to do some story quests, but otherwise it's a straight but curvy shot with little complication. Very spooky, but not much to it. Weird thing to note, I get a weird bug where every time I approach the entrance to the path, the spooky, ghostly humming sound effect will persist everywhere I go when I leave the path up until I log out. Made me think the first town in Blackroot Vale was haunted when I first got there. I enjoy how uniquely pretty Gondor is. It's hard to explain. The soundtrack helps too. West and Central Gondor are both under attack by pirates. Well, they're called corsairs, but same thing. They come from Umbar to the south. West Gondor is holding out the best of the three Gondorian regions, but it's still seeing its lands crawling with outlaws and raiders. I could have gone east and southeast after exiting the paths to go straight for Lamedon, but I elected to book it south so we could pass Edhelon and get a view of Dol Amroth, one of my favorite cities in the game. I wish more people would hang around there. We also get a view of some lit beacons. After scouring through Lamedon, only getting a glance at Calimbel, we enter Central Gondor. The world turns dark as Mordor looms. Things become more grim the closer you get. And I get aggroed by a bear. Not cool! I'm guessing it was level 102, meaning it was just barely in level range to want me dead. I turned south to enter Dor Enornil and began heading for Linhir. After Nolwenn had an oopsie with lag, I switched to my travel steed, Litron. Side note, if anyone gets the references with these names I give to my characters and horses, please point it out in a comment. We need to talk. So how the hell is Linhir supposed to work? Like, foundationally? Look here, it seems to be built on the basis that this part here looks like it was hit by an earthquake. I don't know, man. I decided to run through Pelargir because I can. I love how Gondorian cities look, and Pelargir, unlike Dol Amroth, essentially sits right on my path. It can be traversed as part of it. This is it. Almost there. Anyone got their bets written in the comments? East Gondor has a few branches of note, but generally west of the Anduin, from Pelargir, it's a straight shot to Minas Tirith. Almost. I forgot about this orc-held bastion, right at the entrance of the Pelennor. Well, I didn't forget, but I forgot they blocked the regular way out. So I rushed in, and found myself cornered, and being chased by angry orcs. Luckily, Nolwenn is just too fast, and I was able to get through the cracks, literally. Now I'm on the Pelennor, last leg of the run. It feels good. As I ride up to the White City, I reflect back on all the great times I had on this journey, like when I destroyed crops in the Shire, or when I set myself and Nolwenn ablaze by touching a drake, or when Nolwenn got stuck on scaffolding near Woodhurst and the game wouldn't let me dismount. I'm joking, of course. I mean, these things did happen, but I won't pretend they ruined my time. This game is my comfort game. I will always enjoy my time with it. Over every hillock and under every ruin might lie something you don't expect, and no matter how much I play this game or come over its absolutely massive map, it continues to surprise me over and over and over. And there we go. Let's check my time. It looks like it took me a whopping 2 hours and 45 minutes to get from Mickle Delving to Minas Tirith. Whew. That's almost as long as the theatrical cut of Fellowship of the Ring. Now granted, I wasn't trying to speedrun. If anything, I was doing the opposite. The intention was to prove how massive this game's map is, and I think this managed that with flying colors. Heck, it took half an hour to get from Mickle Delving to Rivendell. There's even a challenge within the game where you're tasked with getting from the Shire to Rivendell, but as a chicken. So you're slower, and also level 1. So every monster I could previously just blow right past as Alansil Stuyvesant the Just would suddenly find me very appetizing. So what's the thesis of this video? That you should play the game because it has a big map? Yes. No, you should play this game because it's fun, and you'll never run out of things to explore. It's like a near limitless playground. Maybe avoid it if you prefer to engage in competition between players, because this game is quite possibly the most hardcore antithesis of competitive multiplayer I've ever come across. There is a mode for just that, but it is infamous in the community for being neglected by the devs more or less since launch, and it's now basically a novelty at best. But if you like hanging out with friends in a chill environment, with the occasional skirmish or raid, while also being able to explore to your heart's content, you're not going to find much better than this. The world I play on is Landroval, which is a goodly populated US server focused on RP. Other worlds are focused on other aspects, or designated to other regions. Thanks for watching. I don't know if I'll make another video like this. Maybe I will.